The capillaries function in the exchange of materials from the blood and the interstitial fluid. So stuff that goes from the blood to the interstitial fluid, which is around our interstitial fluid, which is around our cells in our body. So we can have stuff moving in this direction. So for example, we could have oxygen and nutrients. We could also have hormones being transported in the blood and going to their cells, their target cells, which they're going to bind to. We also have, going the other direction, carbon dioxide. We also have waste like urea, and then other things that can be picked up by the body, other wastes, for example. Okay, so we have exchange. And so these capillaries, they need to be leaky. So stuff needs to be able to get out. And so they generally are very thin-walled. So generally, they just consist of that endothelium and then maybe a very thin layer of what is called the basement membrane. There are 3 types. And these types vary in the amount of leakiness they have. So the first type is actually the least leaky, and it is called a continuous capillary. So this is the least leaky, right? At least permeable. And then the next type of capillary is the fenestrated. So this would be more leaky. And then fenestrated capillaries. And then we have the sinusoidal. And so like a sinus is a large space. Fenestrated actually means that there's like holes. So like Swiss cheese, fenestrated, right? The sinusoid means that there's big spaces, big sinuses, and they are capillaries, sinusoid capillary. So this is the most leaky. So let's look at diagrams of these and compare their anatomy, their histology, as well as where they are located in the body. So the most common type of capillary are the continuous. They are the least leaky, the least permeable, but they're the most common. So for example, they could be found in your skin, in your muscles. They can also be found in your brain. This is also lungs and in the brain. When we talk about the nervous system, oftentimes we talk about what is called the blood-brain barrier. So in the brain, these are even less permeable because there's the blood-brain barrier, which we'll talk about more when we get to the nervous system. So you'll notice here that there are no, big spaces, but substances can leave. And you'll notice how small this is. This is so tiny in terms of its diameter that really only a single red blood cell can fit through at a time. And so remember, we talked about the importance of having a specific shape, biconcave disc of the red blood cell that would allow it to move easily through the capillaries and not get stuck. Okay, so if we look at the fenestrated capillaries, so now notice it looks like Swiss cheese. There's holes in the capillaries. So these are pores. Fenestrated capillaries have pores. And so one place that they are located is in the kidneys, because this is where we have filtration of the blood. So we need a lot of the stuff that is in the blood to leave the blood. So we need it to be more leaky, more permeable when it goes into the capillary beds of the kidney. And the same thing goes with the small intestine. What is special about the small intestine? this is where we have the absorption of nutrients. So we need to be able to pick up rather large substances and get them into the capillaries so that we can then transport them in the circulatory system. So that's where those fenestrated capillaries are located. And then the last type was the sinusoidal. So you notice not only do they have pores, but they have big spaces between them, big what are called intercellular clefts. Okay. And so these occur in the liver because the liver is also filtering the blood of toxins, and it is also taking all the nutrients and modifying those nutrients. It also occurs in the bone marrow. What is the red bone marrow's function? That is the production of blood cells. And so blood cells need to be able to get out of that via the capillaries in the bone marrow, right? And then the spleen also filters blood. So the spleen filters blood, and that is, remember, where we have large white blood cells called macrophages that actually eat red blood cells, old damaged red blood cells, and break them down. And so these are places where we have sinusoidal capillaries. So again, this would be the most leaky. The most common and least leaky would be, and least permeable, would be the continuous capillaries. And that makes sense because their cells have junctions between them that are continuous. There's no spaces between the cells, hence that idea of continuous lining of the capillary.